Coming to you today from the gray truck on a cold start, and I'm sure my neighbors are loving me right now because these MagnaFlows don't do much as far as a muffler, and it's got to warm up for like 5 minutes. So yeah, this is gonna be great. So next thing that I'm gonna do as far as a video for this truck is I'm gonna put together a little series on the entire build, because I've actually got some more footage that I didn't realize that I had. Alright, now I'm back. Got my phone. You always gotta have a phone when you're driving an old truck, because you never know what might happen. I've actually had this truck back when it was a V6 and bottomed out a little bit. I had it back when it was a V6, and I was driving along one day. We'd just done the swap. We'd rebuilt the engine and put the 4.3 back in, and there's quite a lot of wires that you gotta hook up. And it turns out that we had left one of those wires off, and needless to say that it finally found a ground through the intake, and when it grounded, it was a bad deal, because it shut the truck down and popped like one of the main fuses to the starter. So every time I turned the key over, it just kept popping fuses. It wouldn't. I couldn't get accessory. I couldn't get it to crank. I couldn't get anything. I got nothing. And I was like, what the heck? Why is this happening? I got towed back to the house, and we were looking at everything, and there's a wire, just like a wire to some idle air sensor or something that we had left off that had rubbed and grounded its way out. So I ended up making some repairs on that, and it took off. But we're getting some nice weather here this time of year. I wouldn't say it's nice. It's just nice enough to drive the truck. Winter's coming in, and we're going to do a lot of videos of the ZR2, some off-road footage, and that'll be my next little project thing. Is the little ZR2 I've got. It's got a torsion bar crank, and it's got a pretty aggressive set of wheels on it. It's got a set of Fuel D 525s with a -8 offset. It's got a little Flowmaster, K&N, nothing crazy right now. You know, I bought it as a stock truck, and basically it was a one owner. I wish I'd have had the vlog about the time I bought it. And when I showed up, the guy was pretty much like, yeah, I mean, it got deeded to me, but so it's technically two owners, but I drove it like down the road and back. And I was like, whoa, okay, so this is like a one owner, and it's pretty much what it was. Crawled up underneath it, and everything was straight. You know, the frame was perfect. Had 93,000 miles on it, I think. So it was in great shape. But it was all stock. You know, there was like absolutely nothing done to it at all. So that was kind of a good thing, because I wanted something else that I could build. Kind of like the little white S10 that you see in a lot of my other videos. That little truck there started out with 53,000 miles on it. It was a barn. It was in a barn, so it's just a total barn find. It was pretty awesome. It was really neat to come across a truck that had not been molested. Most S10s like have been modified in some way, and somehow I've gotten lucky with the past two, and they've been basically like perfect little, you know, non-molested trucks. It was kind of cool to find that. This one here, when I bought it, was not really in the best shape. It was pretty rough. I'll have some of those videos up with the vlog today, and they were pretty rough. It had a little body damage, and it looked like a raccoon had been turned loose inside this thing, because it was absolutely destroyed. This seat was just destroyed, okay? Like, holes in the seat, headliner was torn. Of course, it had a 4.3 in it, and it was a 5-speed, which still got the same 5-speed in it. You know, these little NV3500s they'll take a beating. I mean, this isn't a drag truck. Like, I've roll raced it and had some fun with it, but I would not drag race this thing. This engine makes roughly, at the crank, probably about 400 by the specs, and similar build setups. I've looked at a lot of those, and it should make about 400. So it's pretty stout, and it's probably got about an equal amount of torque. So we're probably at the limit of this trans today. We're probably at the limit. As far as other things that I've done to this truck since videos that have been posted on YouTube, we put some wide wheels on the back. Came up and found a set of Pirellis that were a 275/40. So I threw those on the back of this. Of course, this truck's on a 6-inch drop in the back. It was actually it had shackles and hangers, which was a decent drop for a truck. And then we put the flip kit on and took the hangers off, because you have to use a stock hanger with a flip kit. Tunnel. And yeah, so I had to go back to the stock hanger, sold the hangers, had the shackles right there, and it was like a 7-inch drop. It was like a 1 or 2 inch shackle, so it was riding dirty. Like, I was about 5-inch drop in the front, because I had a spring spindle set up front. It's all Beltec. So it was a 5-inch drop in the front, 7-inch drop in the back, and it was rubbing so bad. Like, I had a kind of a bigger tire on it. So I dropped the tire size down and took the shackles and sold those. And when I sold the shackles, you know, we raised it back up an inch or so, and then I picked out a tire that was way too conservative. Picked out a 255/35, which is more or less like a front tire for most cars today, or most people that are doing setups today would probably use that as a front tire. And it didn't rub, and it was tucked really hard, so it had the it had that look of like a fat tire or a fat setup, and it obviously wasn't. So I ended up finally getting rid of those. I had to use them. I'd bought them. I was like, I'm not gonna just throw these away. You know, that's a set of tires. I'm not just gonna throw them away. And people could say, oh, well, you could have put 20s on the front and run them. Yeah, that's true, but the truck's so slammed in the front, you're going to have to roll fenders. I'd have been rubbing everywhere. That was the whole point of this wheel setup being 18s and then 20s, was to get that rod height that I wanted. I wanted brake without doing something crazy to the suspension. So I was like, I'm going to throw these 20s in the back and 18s in the front. And I think now, as you'll see later in a few videos here, the truck's definitely set up a lot better. And it's got a pretty nasty stance to it now. Like it's running a 275/40 in the back, along with a 255/40 up front. And that's on an 8-inch wide wheel in the front, and I've got a 9-inch wide wheel in the back. So it's got a pretty nasty little stance to it now. It definitely improved it. I would say it made a huge difference in this thing. As far as the ride quality, honestly, like this truck, it rides like a lower truck. I mean, you can tell I'm kind of bouncing around. You can hear stuff rattling. Of course, it's a 25-year-old truck. It's going to have some stuff rattling in it. You know, the dash makes a little rattle every now and then because the speaker panels are just so old. You know, back when the guy that had it before me didn't keep a visor in it, so of course the dash is, you know, it's got some wear. Of course, when I had the upholstery redone, we did the door panels, we did the seat, we did the headliner, the sun visors, we did the carpet, you know, pretty much the essentials. Some of these panels are new too, but we didn't do the dash, because at the time, when I redid this like 5 years ago, the dash, it wasn't really as bad as it is now. Now it's bad. You know, we've added a lot more power, and of course now the ride's not as good. It's a little harsh, so it's cracked the dash. I think just from rough ride, big engine, driving it hard. You know, this thing ain't really been babied. By no means has it been babied. Like I drive it pretty aggressive, as you can tell. The camera is sliding. I've actually had this thing up in the mountains playing around with some passenger cars that were, you know, no, I'm not going to say built for the mountains, but I'm going to say that, you know, they had suspension. They had a good setup. There was a WRX, there's a S2000, there was a Lexus IS250, and then my buddy used to have a LS1 swapped RX-7. Of course, he was a little harder to keep up with. That car is super quick for its size, and, you know, but this thing did really well. Like, I was right behind him the whole way. I mean, I wasn't like pushing him, but in terms of like me keeping up and not having any trouble, it definitely did the job. It handled pretty good. Oversteer, understeer wasn't really all that bad. I mean, the truck it's sitting on such a stiff suspension, it literally has like no give. As you can tell right here, everything's rattling. You know, I mean, look at this. This is nuts. We're bouncing around all over the place. This is a really rough bridge though, and I didn't really show it any mercy, just to show how bad the suspension. It's not really. I'm not going to say it's bad. I'm just going to say it's really stiff. And in all honesty, I don't really care. People are like, oh, the ride's terrible. Why would you do that? Because I don't care. Because this is not a truck I drive every day. This is not a truck that I didn't care. If it rode like a hay wagon, I did not care. I wanted the look. And that's just one thing to know. If you're going to do a flip kit on these trucks, and you want to go all out and slam the thing, just know ahead of time that it's going to ride a little different. It's going to be very stiff. You're going to feel bumps in the road. It's not going to ride like a Cadillac. Like how your truck would have rode stock was probably kind of floaty. This is kind of how I remember mine. It was a little floaty, and you know, wasn't really the best as far as like handling wise. It was really kind of floaty. But now, like, this truck it's great. Now this thing was straight piped for a little while. that was a lot of fun. When it was straight piped, it was really loud. Like it was super loud. I remember driving through Johnson City, where we're from in this area here, and you had people just like giving you thumbs up and stuff, and it was fun. Then you'd have the people that were like pissed, like on the phone trying to have a conversation, and you're sitting there idling, and it's just retarded. Like roll their window up and start yelling and blowing a horn and goes down. I was like, this is fun. This is just not wise. Like, I'd be better off just going back to having something that I can talk in, I mean, when I put 2 MagnaFlows on this truck, it was kind of crazy because all of a sudden I could hear the radio, and then I started to hear all these rattles and stuff that I normally don't hear. Because used to, you know, the truck is so loud you couldn't hear anything rattling. You didn't know that you had a problem. And then when you put mufflers on it, it was like, oh, hey, I can hear the radio. That's cool. I mean, I had a sub in here and everything. Couldn't even hear it. You'd have to go crank it on it. I'd literally have to turn it, like the volume on this Pioneer unit, I'd have to turn it to like 30 to be able to hear it. I was like, wow, this is nuts, you know? Like, I'm having to turn this way up to be able to hear it. It was fun, but the guy at the muffler shop was just like, you want to cut? I had some old mufflers on it. They were an older knockoff, like Flowmaster. I'd run a bunch of racing fuel through them and the baffles would burn out, and it kind of had this like, like if you could imagine taking a Folgers metal coffee can and turning that into a muffler, that's kind of what it sounded like. It had this really like, it had a good rumble, but it was just weird. It was weird. So I ended up pulling those off. I've still got them, and they were turn downs. It had mufflers with 3-inch turn downs that dumped at the axle, and it sounded awesome, but man, you couldn't hear anything. Even with the mufflers on it, the drone was so bad at highway speeds. When I went to these MagnaFlows, I can honestly say that it helped it out a lot, as far as like just being able to drive the truck and being able to hold a conversation down in it and listen to the radio. You know, it's kind of nice, and it's still got a good rumble. These MagnaFlows are great. I bought the ones that have a chamber that kind of goes straight through. It's got some perforated holes and some packing in there. And all the other mufflers that I did a lot of research on this, and if you'll watch Engine Masters, they did a test on this very setup, and the results were that the MagnaFlow that had a straight through design out of a muffler gave you the best result. It was more straight through, had a good sound, and they actually tested it on an engine that had the same comp 280H cam. They had Vortec heads. Of course, I've got 041 heads, so it's a comparable head. They're pretty close. Of course, mine's been ported, and they've got bigger valves and springs in them, so I mean, it's definitely going to be closer to a Vortec, or maybe even a little better than the Vortec head, honestly. Like, it's going to be a toss-up. And they were making, you know, 420, 400 horsepower all day long with a similar setup to me. So I'm also running a dual plane Holley air gap on here. I've got a Holley Quick Fuel 650. The bottom end, I think it's got a set of TRW pistons in it. They're just normal old, I think they're just cast. I don't think they're any kind of special torched or anything. It's been a while. The truck's been together for about 5 years now, so I can't remember what we put in it. Their TRW part number, though, I found it in an old hot rod magazine, and they were talking about this part number with the dome could make about 11-to-1 compression with the right setup. So that's exactly what I did. I followed that in that old hot rod magazine, and we checked the compression on it. It's right at 10.8 to 1. So it's as close to 11-to-1 as you can get, and this is literally on the edge of pump gas. If you take these old engines and you go past 11 to 1, I don't think you're going to run pump gas very well. Not with a lot of timing. I'll go ahead and say that. With a lot of timing, this thing still does not like being shut off. It's got a little bit too much timing in it. When you run the good stuff in it, you know, if I mix a little 110 in this thing, it's awesome. You can tell a big power change, and it runs better. It really does. Of course, I'm not running a very aggressive. This is a street truck. It doesn't have a crazy setup. It's got a set of Hedman headers on it because they're pretty much the only ones that offers a good thick flange and a long tube for an 88 to 98 truck that has a 350 in it. Same way with the engine mounts. When you swap it over, you got to swap the frame mounts too. Have fun with that one, because you actually have to go through where the coil springs are and unbolt the frame mount and bolt you up the V8 mounts in the V6's place. Oh, and by the way, the V6 frame mounts are really hard to come by. So if anybody needs some frame mounts, I do have the V6 mounts. If you have one of these trucks and yours is broken, they are. I've heard stories of them being broke, or you know, people trying to weld them up and stuff. I got lucky in a junkyard and found this thing with the frame mounts in it. The guy in the junkyard, of course, it didn't have any suspension under it, so it made it easier to pull them. But just a heads up, if you're looking to get your hands on one of these trucks and you want to swap it, I'm going to be straightforward with you. It's not terrible. We done it in about a month or two. Just, of course, we worked at our own pace. We didn't push it. We didn't do anything out of the ordinary to try to get it done in time. Put it that way. You know, you change your frame mounts, your radiator, you take your whole front pulley system will bolt onto pretty much any small block. Just saying. So if you guys are running a Serpentine 4.3 and you want to use it, and I want a V8 swap it, okay, cool. You can actually take the whole thing and bolt it onto your main block. So, but that's gonna do it for this little session with the gray truck here. Just some little Q&A time, some stuff you probably didn't know. Of course, we're gonna have a video coming soon of the full build. I've got a lot more footage, and I should have you something pretty cool soon. So I'm gonna start working on that one tonight, and if you're tuning in, like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.